Hello there, and welcome to What's the Point? A question we should all be asking ourselves, and the podcast by brand architect Bill Ellis that will help you discover, clarify, and live your purpose.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to What's the Point, your podcast about purpose, passion, and persistence. And not surprising, I've got another incredibly interesting and experienced guest today. Welcome, Holly Haynes, to the What's the Point show.
Awesome. Thank you.
Holly, to introduce her, is the CEO of Faith-Based Counselor Training Institute. We'll talk more about that. It was an institute started by her father, Dr. Michael Haynes, and those of you on the YouTube version, she's very proudly wearing her FBCTI shirt, which is fabulous. Holly's been a certified restorative therapist specializing in anger management and chemical dependency and helping women align with life since 2005. She's also a certified chaplain and an ordained minister. And prior to this phase of her life, Holly was a general contractor written up in Southern Living magazine as the top female home builder for the state of Texas, where she used to live, but also written up in International Living for her building and design in Central America, where she spent 3 years. So that is quite a bit, and we're going to talk about all of that and how you did that and how you got where you are, and so welcome.
Hi, thank you so much, Bill. It's such an honor to be here. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time and look very much forward to your experience and insights. Well, let's start with Texas. Is that where you were born and raised? Is that where you were to start when you became a general contractor in Texas?
Yes, I tell people I'm born and bred Texan. The Texan never comes out. You can probably hear that in my accent.
Yes.
Even though I have not lived there in probably 15 years now, it just still is very prevalent. So they say you can take the girl out of Texas, but you can't take Texas out of the girl. So, yeah, born and raised there. My mom and dad both graduated high school from Paris, Texas, high school sweethearts. And I was born in Paris, Texas, and actually grew up in the Dallas area and then East Texas, Tyler, Texas. And Tyler, Texas is where at the age of 27, I started my own general contracting company called, Holly Construction at the time. So.
Okay, so that's pretty incredible. There's a few comments there. I've got cousins that were born and raised in Tyler, Texas. But so you talked about being born in Paris, Texas, and then opening your contracting company when you were 27, which leaves a big opening that I'd like to fill with some detail. So getting from that beautiful tiny baby in Paris, Texas, to becoming a general contractor, what was the path you took to get there?
Well, after high school, I literally I grew up basically in Dallas. My dad was a pastor. And so he pastored 4 different churches as I was growing up. So I was a PK. That just means a preacher's kid. And I tell people it's better than the DKs. And people are like, what's that? And I'm like, that's the deacon's kids. But we all grew up together. And my dad pastored a church called First Baptist Church in Urbandale when I was growing up in my junior high time. And I actually went to First Baptist Academy, which was in downtown Dallas. It was W.A. Criswell's school and church in downtown Dallas. And then he got another pastoral position in Mineola, Texas, First Baptist Church of Mineola, Texas, which led us to East Texas. And so from there,
just out of curiosity, sorry to interrupt you, but help me under. That's one of the towns I've never heard of. Whereabout is that? You said East Texas.
It is East Texas. Mineola is probably an hour east of Dallas, and probably an hour before Longview, Texas. Right down the heart, like I-20. So.
Well, that helps me. I'm not sure it helps the listeners, but there's always Google Maps.
Well, it's interesting. We've got, quite a few famous people that have been in those little towns around us. I graduated high school from Lindale, Texas, And of course, if you're a country music fan, everybody probably knows Miranda Lambert. She graduated many, many years after me, I have to say. But
Hmm.
I graduated high school in Lindale, Texas. And then from there, I um, went to college on a full drama scholarship. So,
Drama.
yeah.
Okay.
So my story's really interesting. People ask me, how do you get, like you did, how did you get from going to college on a full drama scholarship and looking to go to Hollywood to building houses? I mean, it's a completely different shift. So I went to college and ended up a year into college getting married. And I was very young. I was 19. And
Mm.
so at 21, I delivered my first child, my precious son named Matthew, who is 37 years old today. I can't believe it. That just dates me. It's unbelievable. But that's
Yeah, he got old.
yeah, yeah. That's just what kind of ended that part of that aspect. I did go to college on the full scholarship and was in plays and all of that. And when that happened, it just took my life in a totally different shift. It was not a good marriage, and it did not last. And so I raised my son by myself as a single parent till about he was about 4 years old, and I met a wonderful guy who later became my husband, and he had three children from a previous marriage, and then
Hmm.
I had Matthew, and then we had one together. So it's
Okay.
the Brady Bunch, but we raised five children together, and we were together um, close to 16 years. And we are not together anymore, but we are dearly great friends and have great, fabulous children and lots of grandchildren. And so that really is what led me from where I was in Tyler to Colorado. So to shift backwards to start the building business, he was actually a pediatric dentist. And when the last child of ours, Coleman, who is 30 now, went to school, I was really bored. And and this is kind of my story to women because I've reinvented myself at so many different stages and ages of my life. And this stage was at the time we were building a home, and it was not a great experience. And all of my friends were basically having these nightmare experiences with their builders. And I thought, how hard can
Mm.
this be? It just can't be hard, right? And so I ended up building a spec house. For the first thing I ever did, it was a $500,000 spec house in a gated community. And I ended up having families fight over it and selling it for way more than the asking price. And that basically started my career. From that moment, the men builders thought I was crazy because I was definitely in a man's world. They thought, here's this, old doctor's wife, and she just thinks she's going to come out and do all this. Well, to make that story short, I ended up being very, very involved with the Builders Association nationally and on our local level, and ended up being great, great friends with the majority of the builders. And it was a long, beautiful career. I ended up building Habitat for Humanity homes. I built a lot of subdivisions and built a lot of homes for a lot of happy families. And that was just an amazing time. It was great. But I tell you, Bill,
Yeah, it sounds it. So if I may, sorry to interrupt, but if I may, I just want to dig a little bit deeper into that whole uh, chapter of your life because what would drive you, and male or female, what would drive you to say, I'm having trouble getting my house built. Friends of mine are having trouble, so gosh darn it, I'm just going to become a general contractor and get this done.
mhm.
That seems rather unusual, if not bold, or both. So, talk to me about the motive there.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what was driving you.
Well, it was definitely bold, I'll tell you that. But I think that I am really geared towards that. My personality is geared towards that. I think if I see a problem or a need, I can meet that, then that is definitely a goal of mine. I know a lot of people over the years have said, "Oh, she's like Legally Blonde. She just woke up morning and decided she wanted to go to law school." you know and that's really basically what happened to me. And I thought, and from the very beginning, Bill, I really surrounded myself with great workmanship. I had a great crew. I had about 100 men crew, and I had a foreman, and we were able to come up with houses, that were 6,000 square feet with swimming pools in 4 months, versus another builder that would take 12 to 15 months to come up with the same
Mhm.
house. Um, I was very particular. I only took
So,
a,
if I'm hearing you correctly,
uh-huh.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I only took a certain amount of projects so I could get them done in that kind of speed. And of course, I was running a household and raising 5 children, 4 boys, and 1 girl, and was at the ball field every single night for different games. And we just fit that in. And I think when I started out, I basically jumped into the deep end. I didn't get my toe wet. I basically just said, "Hey, here's a plot of land. Here is," I actually picked the house plan out online. I did all the interiors, and I think the success of my career in that came from being a woman in this field, because we are the ones that are in the homes every day. We
Mm.
know the things that we need in the homes, whether it's storage, whether it's lighting, whether it's whatever it is. It's us that's usually in the home. And so I incorporated all those things in my designs, and it was just awesome. But you're right. I had no experience in that. I had not been to school for that. And it was just, God just blessed it for me. I've been building ever since.
Yeah. So, sorry for the interruption earlier, but what I was going to say is what I hear you saying, just to try to pull the nuggets out of this, is when you decided to get into this, you went into it with a very clear purpose of delivering a quality product
Hmm.
by by building a team of quality, interested individuals that wanted to accomplish a goal, right?
Yes.
And then when you layer that in, what I find very intriguing, and I wouldn't have thought of that, maybe it's my male thinking, is to have the perspective of a female who runs a household,
Hmm.
who's going to say this works better than this, or this typically isn't here. All of that sounds like it came together pretty well. But I'm still fascinated, Holly, by your comment that you just kind of dove in, female into a quote unquote male world. And what was the learning curve like?
Well, I think the big learning curve for me is, I'm a very detailed person. I think if you go into anything like this, you need to be very detailed in your personality. I think the biggest learning curve for me was, I'm just going to be honest, it was just definitely the accounting part.
Mm.
And I ended up hiring accountants, but I did a lot of that myself. And I tell you, Bill, one of the biggest aspects about my building company was the fact that I charged a certain percent, but all of my subs that came along, whatever price my subs had and they bid, was my client's price. In other words, there wasn't any padding. And so
So you didn't put a markup on their markup
no,
and pass that on.
no. Now my percent was a few percent higher than the builders, but I didn't go in and charge people for my cell phone bill and my truck payment and, things of that nature that just get added
Mhm.
into that. And that was the struggle that my friends were having. They were having, somebody would bid a slab for $15,000 and it would come in at $40,000 right off the bat. And so that doesn't leave a lot of room for all the good stuff in the end, what I call the sprinkles
Right.
on the top, you know. So I couldn't figure out why you bid a slab at 15,000. That didn't make sense to me. You should know that stuff. So I
Mhm.
just jumped in and did a few things a little different and yeah, it was good.
Okay. So another very interesting question. You say you had a very professional and dedicated crew,
Hmm.
no doubt the vast majority of whom were male. What was it like? Talk to me about your leadership ability to come in and to kind of, herd these cats, if you will, and or at least the cat calls, whatever
Yes,
the
there
case might have been,
they
and
didn't do that but
get
once.
them to toe the line.
Yeah,
Pardon me?
I said they didn't do the cat calls but once. Yeah,
I won't ask what you did.
yeah. But it's really it's an interesting story because in the beginning a lot of them thought I was like the home owner, coming in to the job site and looking. They had no idea that I was the builder, and these were just subs that would come on with other crews. I always had my main crews, and they were phenomenal. But I ran a really tight ship. My guys did not take shirts off. They didn't blare their music. They all brought their lunches normally, and they didn't leave trash laying around. At the end of the day, everything was picked up. The project was cleaned on a daily basis. So there's a lot of things that we did different. And, you know, I just had a crew that stuck with me. I had a really good
Yeah.
foreman and he stuck with me and he had a lot of guys and then, it just became respect. I'm kind of a no nonsense girl, no nonsense kind of gal. I like to get it done and get things done and then move
Mhm.
on and that's what we did. So,
Okay.
we
One
built
one
we
more
built a
question
parade
that I've got just
homes.
for clar. Okay.
Yeah,
I was just going to ask, were most of your homes spec homes or were they contracted to be built?
they were half and half. I had a lot of contracted builds and a lot of spec homes and we did a parade of home every year. And I would have 5 or 6 thousand people tour through the home in 1 week period, with tickets sold and things like that. But I had probably, I would say, after I got started, I probably had 65% custom homes, and then
Okay.
the spec homes were, I loved because then I could just do at will, you know,
Mhm.
what I liked, and that was awesome, you know. So, but I also, I have I tell people a lot. When I was written up in Southern Living magazine, I had a couple that said that I used for advertising a lot because they said that I was so close to the project that at the end they felt like I was going to move in with them. So, so
Very good.
yeah,
So, so that all went very well, and now, as we progress in your story and the shift, you
yeah.
suddenly were no longer in Texas, and you'd moved to, was it Belize?
Well, I moved to Steamboat Springs, Colorado, from Texas, and
Oh, okay,
and I've been there here ever since. I took a hiatus and went for 3 years to Central America.
yeah,
And I actually did a lot of building. I started a design and real estate firm in Belize on San Pedro and Ambergris.
okay. So my apologies. Obviously, I didn't have the chronology correct, but when you moved from Texas to Steamboat, was that relative to the Institute at that time, or was that kind of like a geographic change, and then
Well, it was a
what got you on hiatus to Central America?
Well, it was a huge shift in my life that brought
Yeah.
me from Texas to Colorado. And I had gone through a divorce, and I had, at the exact same time, I had buried my precious best friend, my mother, at age 60 after a 25-year breast cancer battle. And she had lived with
Mm.
me for, several years. And so we were super close, and it all just kind of hit me at once. And I can't skip over this part, Bill, because it's a big part of my testimony. And I tell people a lot, especially the women that I counsel at certain conferences and things like that that I'm asked to speak at, is that you can have everything that the world says you need to have to be happy, and you can be miserable inside.
Hmm.
And that happened to me. I was living in a home we built that was 17,000 square feet. I had the top line cars. I had the vacations. I had all of these things, but yet when I pulled in the driveway, I just felt like something was just screaming at me. I had just really, really become not depressed, because I'm not a depressive nature, but I had really lost myself.
Okay.
And I don't want to say it went into the raising of all my children, but that was a big part of it. But also I had some hardships with, the three children that were not mine, that we're still super duper close today. And they're like my children. I've raised them. But their mother, for 15 years it was not fun. It was an awful experience. And so all of that combined, and with the death of my mother, there were some things that shifted, and things that shifted, and my ex-husband. And I mean, I don't ever like to talk about or blame anybody, because we all have our roles to play in what we do. But there's some things that sometimes you can't work through. And so I literally, within like a few weeks, I had one building job left for attorney that I was working on there in Tyler. And when I wrapped that up, I literally came to Steamboat on a whim, and I just ended up saying, this is where I want to be. I want to be in Colorado. And I'd gone on a trip with my mom to Breckenridge several years back with my young son at the time. And I remember saying to God as I was driving through the mountains, God, I want to live here. I want to live. I want a little cabin in Colorado. This place is just magical. And so I tell people, when you speak the spoken word and you say things that your heart desires, watch it, because God will make it come true for you if that's on your pathway. So I look back on those kind of things, and it's just so profound in my life. I had a, I had a, I've always loved the Caribbean. I mean, I'm a scuba diver from years ago. All five of my kids, when they turned 13, got PADI certified. We all scuba dive. I love the Caribbean. And I'd had a magazine. I still have the magazine from literally 20 years ago. And there's one
Okay.
page dog-eared in this magazine. And the page is Ambergris Key in Belize. And that was years, decades ago, before I ever
Mhm.
even knew Belize or knew anything about Belize. So I moved to Colorado. And in that time, being here in Colorado, I ended up not doing any of the home builds, but I ended up doing a ton of remodels and the interior designs. And boy, in the last 13 years here, I've done, thousands here. I've done all of downtown condos on the mountain. I've had three furniture stores here. it's been an incredible ride too, because the interiors are my love. That's what I love to do. Colorado is just a different animal than Texas for building, a lot more excavation, a lot of different things. And here we have a skiing problem. So if it's a sunny day, workers usually don't like to show up. So for me, that didn't work out real well. So I ended up just doing interiors, and I've done 2 or 3 restaurants here, and just lots of stuff here. And then I really, 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 my kids were all grown and their own lives, and I just decided one day I just want to go to the Caribbean, and I ended up talking to a friend that I ran into when I was in Honduras, scuba diving actually. And she was a real estate agent in Belize. And she's like, I'll hire you tomorrow. So I'm like, great. So I end up in Belize working for Sotheby's International Real Estate. And then I decide after about a year that I really want to go out on my own. I want to do my own real estate company, my own design firm. People found out on the island real quick. It's a small island that I do design work. And so, a lot of the expats that live there are from the US. So I ended up just completely doing home builds there, and remodels and interior. And the challenge there, Bill, that's the interesting thing, because, I tell people, like when you asked a while ago about being a woman in a man's world, with the building business, it also takes gumption for a single woman to just up and move to a foreign country, not really knowing anybody, not knowing what you're going to do. So that takes a lot of faith, takes a lot of prayers, and God just opened the doors for me. And so God's really good with me about opening doors and slamming them. I mean, he either opens them with me or slams them, because if he barely shuts them, it's like a yield sign to me. He
Yeah.
has to fit.
So it kind of the symmetry of you saying that you just um, love scuba diving,
Mhm.
and that your tendency, both in when you first became a general contractor, and then when you moved to Steamboat, and then when you moved for at least a 3-year respite to the Caribbean, is you just jump into the deep end, which is the same kind of the analogy of your scuba diving. And what I want to do now, and we're going to come back forward to the present with the Faith-Based Counselor Training Institute.
Yes.
So I'm not overlooking that, but
Yes.
it's intriguing to me, the path.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm kind of interested in, and part of the reason that I do this show, and part of the reason my listeners tune in, is to try to find that common element that we can all kind of tap into, because not all of us, if any of us, are going to suddenly be young blonde females in Texas becoming a general contractor. We're not going to replicate that exactly, but there are some common traits. So help me understand, help my listeners understand what it was like. What was the string? What was the common thread driving you there? Your purpose.
Well, the purpose my purpose has always been other people. Literally, my purpose for getting in the building business was to help people have a good experience. My purpose in going to a foreign country was to experience that and open doors in a foreign country that might not otherwise be opened. And the purpose for me that drives me is always what I can do to make something or someone better. My
Okay.
purpose is never my purpose, because when it becomes my purpose, that's when God slams the door. So that's the purpose that's always driven me. And I speak a lot about my 5 Ps, Bill. Because I have 5 Ps that for your listening audience, purpose is phenomenal. And people ask all the time, what is my purpose? Like they've lost it. I find that interesting because your purpose is not ever lost. It's just maybe wrapped up in all your busyness of your life and the accumulation of our minds and things like that. So if you get clear and you get quiet, my 5 P's are for your purpose is first and foremost prayer, because a life centered not around prayer usually doesn't have a purpose. It usually bounces around an awful
Mhm.
lot. And then the second P is promise, because God promises us, even in Proverbs 11:15, he says, in all your ways acknowledge him and he directs your paths. I mean, that is a clear promise. So in all your ways. And then, of course, passion is huge for me. If I didn't like interior design or the building process, there's no way I could have done that. So, you can't do something if it's not your passion. You can't, because then you're in an 8 to 5 job and you're miserable every day. And that's just not an existence for people. And then
Mhm.
my last P, other than purpose that we talked about, is persistence. And persistence is this bill is where people drop the ball
Mhm.
because we are such a microwave society that we think if it's hard, then it's just not, we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And the persistence is the result of 4 months building a big house and then and it can be like build, just for instance, the first house I built in Texas, we poured the slab and it snowed. Now that's rare for Texas. It was not in the forecast, right? So
Surprise.
surprise, my first build at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm calling subcontractors to go out to the job. I'm meeting them out there. We're covering it up. It's a persistence of when that 4 months is done, all the mishaps and all of the issues that happened along the way, which is in every situation. It may not be
Mhm.
building for you, it may be whatever your activity or your job is, you're going to have daily setbacks and daily things. But at the end of that project, when that family walks in that house and they have a home and they love it, then that's the persistence. And that's the mark of the high calling. That's the race, because sometimes we get so tired of running the race, but we quit 2 steps before
Mhm.
they walk in the house.
Yeah. So what I find interesting, Holly, is, and I'm speaking with Holly Haynes, who's the CEO of Faith-Based Counselor Training Institute. Holly, what I find interesting is that you've got 5 Ps and I've got 3. And that doesn't mean that I don't embrace your first 2, but people that listen to the show can, with any consistency, know what I'm going to say, and that is I talk about the purpose principle, and it's part of why I created and do this show and am persistent with it. Is
Yes.
having a purpose to me is having a goal to move towards, having something that is going to somehow be fulfilling, and to me, that ignites our passion.
Yes.
And to me, passion is our fuel. So if I start with passion and don't have a proper place or an effective place to put that passion, that's going to fizzle out. So
Yes.
what I talk about and encourage people to think about is identifying purpose, and it doesn't have to be static and it doesn't have to be solo and it's not going to be exactly the same. It's going to grow, it's going to evolve, it's going to expand, and all of that comes through persistence. So to me, it's find your purpose,
Yes.
ignite your passion, and keep renewing that through persistence. But when you said, what is your purpose, have I lost it, that's why I do the show, to help people find clarity of purpose, to maybe go, aha, that's an element that I wasn't seeing, or to discover a purpose. Because part of my story is I was in a corporate job for a long time and I was doing relatively well, but I was miserable. And it's because I didn't have a purpose in that job. I didn't have a right purpose. I didn't have a purpose that ignited my passion.
Yes.
So I want to help people through the story of others that have gone through the journey to see and hear things that might give them that aha moment. So I just wanted to put that out there.
I love that. That's the splange nitsomai moment. And so that word was my word for 2022. Try to say it 5 times. My dad,
I'm not going to try to say it once, but I'll ask you to say it again.
it's splange nitsomai, and it's a Greek word. And so I love taking words and breaking them down from the Greek into the Hebrew too. And so splanch nitsomai just means moved to action in the Greek. And so, and in the Hebrew, the splangna means internal organs. And so what it means is that the internal organs, it literally means to be moved so deeply in the pit of your stomach. And an example of that, Bill, is that a lot of us go by homeless on the street, on the corner holding a sign. And a lot of us go right on by them and just say, oh, that's so sad, right? But splanch nitsomai, move to action, means that someone saw that homeless person and it moved them with so much burning passion on the inside that they went to either volunteer at the soup kitchen, they went and did something for the homeless. In other words, they were moved to action. And so
Hmm.
a lot of us have passion, but until you have that burning passion that is so deep within you, you're usually not moved to that kind of action to where you make it a career or you make it, something that really, really has that purpose for you in it.
Yeah, and sometimes it's short term. Sometimes it's, boy, there's a situation that I'm moved to do something about. But what you're talking about, burning passion, is essentially, maybe it's semantics, but it's what I talk about as purpose. So let me. I always want to be respectful of the time that you've generously gifted us. So I do want to move on and move forward a little bit because moving to your current position with the Faith-Based Counselor Training Institute, which was started by your father, Dr. Michael Haynes, right?
Yes.
So all of the information on how to access FBCTI and everything we're talking about will be in the show notes as always. But one thing that might drive people to that website sooner, and is a great segue from what we've been talking about, is a book that you've published that's available for free download on the site, and it's called Passion and Purpose: How to Fuel the Fire, Follow Your Heart, and Pursue Your Dreams. So that, in a nutshell, kind of talks about that, kind of defines what's the point in my mind. So tell me the story of leaving, for the most part, general contracting and getting more full time into the institute.
Well, this was a miracle how this happened. So my dad has run this institute since 1996, and it is global. It's worldwide. There's been over 21,000 students in many, many foreign countries and the United States that have gone through the school. The school is basically a two-part school. It's a school that trains you to be a crisis chaplain in your community and your church, or you can become a restorative therapist, which is a faith-based counselor. So, how this happened, Bill, is I'm running along in my life in Belize, and my company has just started, which, by the way, in Belize takes about 2 years to do the paperwork and the forms and to fill out to get anything like this. I had actually just built a restaurant and I'd named it after my mother, Kay's Diner. My mother was Kay. And the restaurant had only been open 6 months, was doing very well. And I get a call from my dad, who lived in Temple, Texas at the time. And a little bit of background about my dad is after he has written over 100 books, he's published 60 on his own.
Wow.
And he is a very established author. And he literally, when he left the ministry, well, he's never left the ministry, but when he quit pastoring because he was touring the country with his books. And he ended up getting called in by President Bush for 9/11. He was there within 24 hours of the towers falling, and he was there for a year to the date. and he was one of the head chaplains that dealt with all of the families, the victims of the families, on a daily basis. So Dad was at 9/11 in the bucket brigade, in taking the shrapnel every single day in the air for 1 year. I'll note that my dad is also responsible for finding the big metal monument cross in the rubble. He and an iron
Hmm.
worker found that cross in the rubble, and it was pulled out and extricated out of the rubble, and it is now the monument at 9/11. There's been several shows done with him on that, but he was in his, at this time when I got the call in Belize, he was in his eighth round of chemotherapy since 9/11. He had had eight
Hmm.
surgeries, eight chemo from the radiation and the cancer that he had gotten from 9/11. And so my neighbor says, your dad is, because dad's always like, I'm just doing great. I'm doing good.
Yeah.
He didn't want to worry me. The neighbor worried me. And so I knew that there was no way I could run a restaurant in a foreign country or run anything else. I had probably 6 million in listings in the real estate firm and projects lined up. And I said, okay, Lord, what do you want me to do? I knew I needed to be there for Daddy. So I ended up putting the restaurant up for sale. I sold it within 10 days. Little did I know that the pandemic was only 4 months away. And so at that
Hmm.
time in Belize, they grounded the planes. Nobody was able to leave. Nobody could come in for a long time. And so I think this is just God's way of getting me out of the country. And he did it super fast and super quick. And I flew back home. I got to my dad's house, and my dad had been laying on the floor for almost 48 hours. And so I
Oh boy.
knew that I had to be there. So I stayed there with him for the next 4 months at his house. It was just him. I'd been telling him he needed to downsize. He had the 2-story, 4-bedroom house with the pool. And I'm just like, Dad, please, you got to downsize. And so I spent the next 4 months downsizing him, selling the home. And then Daddy was super weak. The days were long. It was hard. We finished the chemo, and I just decided, I made the decision when I sold his house that I'd still owned my house here in Steamboat when I moved to Belize. And so I decided we would come back here to Steamboat. And I found a beautiful, beautiful retirement home for him here. I put him in that, and they actually, Bill, put him, when we got here, they put him in hospice and they gave him 2 months to live. And so we signed all the papers, and after about, Dad was, he was just out of it. He was just gone. We were just saying goodbyes. My two sons, Matthew and Coleman, they live here in Steamboat, and they would go visit, and we had just basically, it was just over. And Dad just kept getting better and better. And I said to my dad, month 3, well, Dad, if you're going to live, what is it? Why are you still here? What does God have for you? And he looked at me, and I'll never forget it. He said, I don't want my material to die in a box. And I said, okay, well, what do you want to do? So from that point, that was the mandate, because Daddy had been for 30 years, Daddy had been all over the world, in China and Hong Kong, doing these live trainings for the chaplain
Hmm.
and for the therapist. So he had been the show. And so he was 78 at the time. So this was the start of what has taken me 3 years to get FBCTI, his courses, put into digital format on the internet, where people can take it with churches, with groups, in their home, individually, anywhere in the world, at any time, at their own pace. So it's been a journey, because I never said, God, I want to be a part of everything Daddy's doing.
Mm-hmm.
I was just well on my way in the Caribbean and diving and doing my thing, and God just plucked me right out. And I can't imagine, now that I've been doing this 3 years, this is my purpose. I can't imagine doing anything else. This was a mandate. This is my father's legacy. This is our legacy to God. And so the interesting thing, Bill, is that through this, we've had so many people from so many countries find us again and say, we thought your dad was dead. We are so happy he just fell off the face of the earth, because he was so sick.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been interesting because, through that process, he lost all of his contacts. He left his phone at iPhone at Walmart one day, and all the contacts that were in there. So we have had to rebuild, with Daddy, with churches. I mean, all over the world, and
Mm-hmm.
it's been a project, and a project of love, and a project where Daddy and I have actually redone the courses together as father and daughter, and we've taught them in a live setting, which is when people take the courses and download it, they get to learn from Dad and I. And of course, he's he's the man, because he's got the PhD and is brilliant. So he is just, it's something else. And I'll tell you, anybody that needs a healing or anybody that is sick, take this word for you, because Dad, after the 2 months of hospice, 6 months later, he gets checked out in the hospital, and they're like, you're too weak. We can't test you. We can't go in. You'll never make the surgery. So a year later, they go in, and my pastor had come to talk to my dad and prayed over my dad and said, they're not going to find a trace of cancer in your body. Now, my dad's bladder had been scraped 8 times. It looked like a 200-year-old man, right? So I'm sitting a year later in the hospital waiting room, and the doctor comes out and he looks at me and he says, your dad has absolutely no sign of cancer, or no sign that any cancer was ever in his bladder. It looks like a 16-year-old.
Wow.
And so I tell people, like, don't give up. Don't give in to the report of the doctor. Don't give in to, you give in to what God's word says over you. That's just it's so powerful. And so this is 4 years later, and my dad is counseling people at the retirement home. He has a Bible study, a weekly Bible study there that tons of the residents come to. I mean, it's a powerful situation. When God's done with you, he's done. When he's not, no matter what they tell you.
Well, that's true, and I agree with you 100%. And it's a very powerful statement to bring this back to kind of the purpose, if you will, of this show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the progression might seem disconnected, but as I see it, you had a basic purpose of what can I do to help people and to make the world a better place, which doesn't mean self-sacrifice. It means it's okay to benefit from that too. Making money is not a bad thing.
Correct.
It's just a bad first thing, as we say in the world of the go-giver. So doing for others is what drove you, and then you found ways where it really excited you and your passion burned, and the persistence kept you going. But as you continued through all of that, as I see it, you took all of these lessons. You were basically in training. How do you dive in? How do you take all of these details of something you don't know? How do you make it into something productive? How do you channel it into the result that you're looking for? And boom, you kind of graduated from that and ended up working with your father to create and bring to life the faith-based Counselor Training Institute. And that to me summarizes my purpose principles, because our purpose evolves. Our experience helps us evolve.
Yes.
If we stay focused on what our purpose is, it's going to evolve. It's going to change. It's going to alter, but the core was still there for you. So now that I've gone out on my rant, it's time for me to ask you the question that everyone gets asked towards the end of this show. And with everything you've gone through and everything you've shared with us, and thank you for that, Holly, what's the point?
The point. There is just one point. And the point for me may sound cliche, but the point is when I stand before the Father, I want him to say, "Well done, my faithful servant." The point is, Bill, is I don't care about worldly, material things that people think make you happy. I care that I have crowns and jewels that when I get to heaven, I can lay at Jesus's feet. Those are the things that don't burn up. That's the point of this life. We were created and made by him to serve him for his purpose. And that's the point.
Well said, well defined of a purpose and the purpose that can drive you, fire up your passion, and as your book says, fuel the fire, follow your heart, and pursue your dreams. Look for Holly Haynes and the Faith-Based Counselor Training Institute. All the information's in the show notes. Holly, thank you so much for sharing your story of faith and success in ways, both material, but more importantly, other than material. I appreciate you very much, and thank you again.
Yes, and thank you, Bill, because I think your podcast and the things that you're doing are fabulous, and it takes somebody with purpose to care about other people's purpose and the point of why we're all here. So kudos to you, and blessings, many blessings to you too, and your wife.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And for all you listeners, if you want to get in touch with me, reach out on email to bill@brandingforresults.com, or as you'll hear in a second, bill@brandingpillars.com. Let me know what you think. Let me know your opinions. Let me know if anything here has helped. But most importantly, I urge you to go to discover more about Holly at the FBCTI website. So thank you all for listening. Thank you again, Holly, for your time.
Yes, thank you, guys.
Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you like what you heard, please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We can promise you'll gain value in every one. Rating and reviewing makes us more discoverable and helps others find out what's the point. And if you'd like to know more about Bill Ellis or contact him, please visit his website, www.brandingpillars.com. See you next time.